What if something so natural could hold the power to interrupt your education, your health, or even your dignity? Well, before we go into that conversation, thank you for joining Gender Perspectives. As you know, this is a program where we examine the issues shaping the lives, rights, and futures of people around the world. My name is Uchenna Chimdi Oluoha. Let's take a break and we'll be back shortly. Welcome back. Now today we shine a spotlight on a critical but often overlooked challenge, period poverty. Now for millions of women and girls who menstruate, something as natural as a monthly period becomes a source of hardship, stigma, and inequality. Now, lack of access to menstrual products, inadequate sanitation, and deep-rooted cultural taboos create barriers that affect education, health, and economic opportunity. Now, to truly understand the weight of period poverty, we need to step back and examine the forces that shaped it, looking at the economic realities, the social silences, the cultural norms, and even the systemic gaps that continue to hold millions back. Now, this issue didn't emerge in isolation. It has evolved through decades of inequality and overlooked needs. So now let's take a look at this background report.
Menstruation is a natural biological process experienced by an estimated 1.8 to 2 billion people globally every month. Yet for hundreds of millions, managing one's period is not simply a matter of hygiene, it is a daily struggle defined by economic hardship, social stigma, health risks, and systemic injustice. This phenomenon, known as period poverty, constitutes a critical barrier to gender equality, individual and public health, and social justice. At its core, period poverty refers to the lack of access to menstrual products, pads, tampons, menstrual cups, inadequate sanitation facilities, clean toilets, water, waste disposal, and insufficient education about menstruation. It is not just a hygiene issue, but a complex mix of economic, social, and infrastructural challenges. Key drivers of period poverty include high cost of menstrual products. Many people cannot afford sanitary pads or tampons. Tax policies often exacerbate this. In some places, menstrual products are classified as luxury goods, pink tax, while other health products may be tax exempt. Lack of sanitation infrastructure. Over 500 million people who menstruate lack access to basic menstrual hygiene facilities. Without private, safe toilets or hand-washing stations, managing menstruation becomes difficult and undignified. Education and stigma. A pervasive taboo around menstruation means that many people never receive proper information about menstrual health. Cultural norms, shame, and gendered expectations further compound the barriers. Marginalization and crisis. People in conflict zones, refugee camps, or underserved rural communities face heightened challenges. Period poverty disproportionately affects women and girls, reinforcing gendered economic disparities. The financial burden of buying menstrual products adds to the cost of being female in many contexts, contributing to cycles of poverty. Gender-blind policy frameworks, such as failure to subsidize menstrual products or exempt them from tax, reflect systemic neglect of menstruation as a health rather than a luxury issue. In sub-Saharan Africa, for example, about 1 in 10 girls miss school during their period. This absenteeism can lead to knowledge gaps, lower academic performance, and even school dropout. Poor menstrual health management also affects women in the workplace, especially where sanitation facilities are absent or inadequate. In this way, period poverty undermines SDG 4 or quality education, and SDG 8 decent work and economic growth. Without access to safe menstrual products and sanitation, individuals may resort to unsafe alternatives such as rags, newspaper, leaves, raising the risk of infections. Studies link poor menstrual hygiene to urinary tract infections, thrush, and other reproductive tract issues. Reusing or wearing products for too long due to cost constraints can further compromise hygiene. The stigma and shame associated with menstruation can have profound psychological effects. Period poverty may lead to feelings of loneliness, embarrassment, and low self-worth. Research during the COVID-19 pandemic revealed that restricted menstrual health resources worsened mental health, especially for marginalized groups. The lack of dignity and agency during menstruation also undermines a sense of bodily autonomy and justice. Period poverty violates basic human dignity. When individuals cannot manage menstruation safely and privately, their right to physical and mental well-being is compromised. Many argue that access to menstrual products and sanitation should be recognized as a fundamental human right, akin to water, hygiene, and health services. Legal and policy frameworks often fail to protect these rights. In many countries, there is no explicit legal recognition of menstrual health as part of reproductive rights. Period poverty disproportionately affects marginalized communities, low-income women, refugees, adolescents, people with disabilities, and gender-diverse individuals. In crisis contexts, for instance, humanitarian emergencies, menstruation is often deprioritized, leaving those who menstruate without essential supplies. The burden of period poverty is thus deeply tied to broader inequalities, economic, social, and political. Period poverty undermines progress on multiple Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs. SDG 3, Good Health and Well-being, because untreated menstrual health needs affect health outcomes. SDG 5, Gender Equality, because limited access to menstrual care reinforces gender disparities. SDG 6, Clean Water and Sanitation, because many people who menstruate lack access to sanitation infrastructure. SDG 8, Decent Work and Economic Growth, as menstrual needs constrain women's economic participation. When it comes to addressing period poverty, some places have made progress. Scotland, for example, passed legislation guaranteeing free period products in schools and public institutions. More countries need to recognize menstrual health as a public good, remove taxes on menstrual products, and mandate provision in schools, shelters, and public spaces. There is a growing call for legal frameworks that explicitly enshrine menstrual rights. Investments are needed in safe, private toilets, water supply, and waste disposal facilities, especially in low-resource and crisis-affected settings. Menstrual hygiene education should be integrated into school curricula, community programs, and health services to reduce stigma and misinformation. NGOs and governments can distribute free or subsidized menstrual products to low-income or vulnerable populations. UNICEF, for example, runs programs to improve menstrual health management. Encouraging sustainable menstrual products such as reusable pads, cups, period underwear can reduce cost over time and environmental impact, but such options must be made accessible and acceptable. Community-led solutions, such as local production of low-cost reusable pads, can empower women economically and improve access. There is a persistent lack of data on period poverty, particularly in marginalized and crisis settings. More research is needed. Advocacy campaigns can challenge stigma and normalize conversations about menstruation, fostering social change. Cross-sector collaboration, governments, NGOs, private sector, communities, are critical to scale interventions and sustain impact. Period poverty is not merely a private inconvenience, it is a profound barrier to gender equality, health, and justice. By denying people the means to manage menstruation with dignity, society perpetuates inequality, undermines public health, and fails to uphold basic human rights. Addressing period poverty effectively requires holistic strategies, policy reform, infrastructure investment, education, product accessibility, and cultural transformation. The stakes are high. Every individual who menstruates deserves dignity, agency, and equity. Eliminating period poverty is not just about providing pads and toilets, it is about affirming that menstruation is not a luxury, but a fundamental aspect of life that deserves respect, resources, and justice.
Having explored the roots and realities of period poverty, it's time to hear from someone who understands these challenges. Our guest today is Mrs. Obiamaka Nwachi. She is the founder of the Girl Essence Mentorship and Advocacy Initiative, an organization dedicated to empowering girls and advocating for gender-just policies. She brings a unique perspective to this issue, making her voice essential in understanding both the barriers and the pathways to change. You're welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Chinna. Thank you for having me.
Now, we're talking about period poverty. It's quite interesting because a lot of people don't even understand or even know what period poverty is. I'm sure some people are even hearing it for the first time today. So can you tell us, what you know about period poverty?
I would say it's the inability of girls and women, to have access to basic things that make them comfortable when they're on their periods. For example, we could talk about their sanitary pads, we could talk about their tampons, we could even go to the extent of talking about facilities, especially in the public, where they could, do their thing when the need arises. You could go as far as talking about education. Some of them are not even aware of certain things that they need to put in place. The way their body is structured to work, the way their body works, when they're on their period. So basically, period poverty has to do with, like I said, the inability of these young girls and even women, I must always add that, to have access to whatever it is that it takes to make them comfortable when they're having their menstrual period.
But it's quite interesting that even in this modern day, this 21st century, this thing is still an issue, having, comfortable spaces and having access to these products when they're on their period. So why is it so persistent even till today?
Just like, excuse me, just like every other thing that happens around the world, it cuts across developmental issues. So while we're suffering this, it's the same way the medical system is suffering, the same way the educational system is suffering, and the infrastructures in Nigeria or even the world and in some places are suffering. So I think it's a question of paying attention and taking the necessary steps and putting the necessary policies in place. Are we going to get to a place where it's completely eradicated? I don't know. But one thing I'm sure is that if we take the right steps, we can, reduce the frequency of this anomaly really and help girls better live better as well.
So would you say that is every woman and girl that has experienced period poverty, or would you say that there are particular people that are mostly affected by this?
Funny enough, I think everybody. Can I say maybe in context, maybe in Nigeria, or do I go outside of Nigeria?
We can use Nigeria.
In Nigeria, for example, I could almost say that every girl has experienced this at some point. Certain people, probably in the rural areas, the younger generation who find it difficult to express themselves, might be experiencing it more. But I feel like it's not only the young girls that get to the public. They're somewhere in public and they don't have easy access to a restroom when they need it, and some of them are not even aware of what happens in their bodies. You'll be shocked that some women do not understand what exactly happens in their system to make them have their period. So I don't think it's restricted to any particular group of people or any particular person. I think to an extent, every girl within Nigeria, every woman within Nigeria would have experienced a little bit of period poverty.
So you have?
Oh.
Can you share an experience?
Where do I start from? I'm not going to say of course, as a kid, as God will have it, I'm comfortable. My parents will always make sure I have access to what I need. And but even now as an adult, because you're forced to visit, you go outside. Sometimes you need to use the restroom. Sometimes you're just uncomfortable. Sometimes you just need some kind of comfort, and for some reason you can't get it. Okay, let's talk about work, for example. And when I have to go to work sometimes, and it's really bad. I have to stay back home. I have to stay back home. I have to avoid a lot of things that I need to do, avoid going out, avoid going to events, avoid going to wherever it is. So, I mean, everybody gets affected one way or the other by this issue of period poverty.
Now, looking at, our environment and our culture, would you say that our culture has a role to play when it comes to this education, or would you say that there are stigmas attached to it because of our culture, or, being seen as a taboo? Like, what do you think about it?
I really do want to believe that Nigeria has evolved to a very large extent. I know that in the past, this may have been considered a taboo, and it would be so difficult to see a girl express herself when she's on her period, or even talk about it. I remember a certain time when I went to speak to some young girls. They were actually primary 6-ish. And I remember I was telling a little girl, I was telling her, if you're on your period, it's okay to tell your teacher, excuse me, ma, please, I need to rest. I need to use the restroom. I'm on my period. And she's like, no, no, I can't do that. I'm like, when are we really going to get to that place where we no longer, see it as being so sacred that we can't talk about it? I get my sons involved when I'm on my period. They know when I'm on my period. They know when I need sanitary pads. In fact, recently I asked him to go get me a sanitary pad, and he's like, Mom, would they look at me weird? I said, that's the reason why you have to get it, so that they will stop looking at you weird. So I want to believe that we are coming to a place where we normalize these things. Let's talk about these things. Talk to your children, talk to your girls about it, talk to your boys about it. Let your girls learn to grow and be expressive about it, and let the boys know not to discriminate against girls or make them feel a certain way simply because they have their periods.
But some parents still don't get that you have to educate the boys on this, because I'm sure a lot of people would be like, a lot of boys will be like, what's my business? Why do I have to know this information in the first place?
It's actually very important that they know this information, because it's not, number one, having the knowledge, it helps them protect the women when the need arises. They're going to be husbands someday. They're going to be fathers someday, and at some point they will need to show some kind of concern to their wives when they're on their periods, or to their daughters. They could, how siblings can be sometimes. They could, maybe shy away from that, like try to push her aside or anything. But it gets to a point where they really have to, face the reality, and it becomes much easier for them. Now, this is just for them. It becomes much easier for them if they've grown in a system where they've come to understand that this is part and parcel of a girl's life. Now, beyond them being able to help those girls, there are when a boy is properly educated on these things, there are certain things he can't say to a girl. There are certain behaviors he can't, portray when a girl is on her period. You can't make fun of a girl when she's on her period. A well-trained boy who his mother has told her period is not her fault, is a natural thing. If there's any mishap, help her, protect her, cover her up. I mean, I don't see why the same person will see a girl in that situation and maybe all he has to do is to laugh at her. So parents, indeed, they have a very important role to play. And unfortunately, a lot of parents, they come from a place where they were not used to being spoken to about such issues. So they themselves are not finding it easy to talk to their children about these issues. But at some point, you just have to train yourself. You have to unlearn some things and relearn some things. And this is the time for parents to relearn, so that we can, one way or another, make life a bit better for the girls, especially with respect to their period.
Exactly. But in our society, I'm very particular about our society, because that's where we find ourselves. So all of our experiences are based off of where we are at the moment. Mm. How does one explain to people that some girls miss school because of their periods, and these girls face issues with productivity and other challenges due to lack of menstrual products and need to be protected? Because some people cannot seem to wrap their head around, what do you mean that you cannot come to school, or you cannot come to work, or you cannot, perform 100% at work or in school because of your period?
I think it takes someone who experiences it to completely understand it. And these are realities. Some people experience periods differently. For me, it may not be so bad. Some people have very heavy flows that they can't go beyond a sanitary pad in 1 hour, 1 hour, 30 minutes, 2 hours. Some people, the aches they experience, the body aches, the tummy aches, it's overwhelming. For some, I have personally experienced someone who had to be rushed to the hospital because she was on her period. There are people who throw up day in, day out because they're on their periods. And because some people don't see these things, they think that when people are explaining that this is what they go through, they think they are lying. It's not a lie. Like I said, I have seen it happen before me. Personally, as a young girl, before I started having children, I had very terrible menstrual pain. And I had to take medications to be able to cope through the day, at least for the first, the second day, and maybe by the third day, I'm, a bit relieved. I know someone who throws up the entire time while she's on her period. I know people who spend their periods, the entire duration of their periods, at least the first 2 to 3 days, in a hospital. So these things happen. But unfortunately, when you're trying to explain these things to people around you, they don't understand because they feel like you're just acting up. And whether you like it or not, because we're human and these things affect us, there's no way we can, you know, be as productive as anybody who isn't experiencing the same things that, you know, whoever it is that is on their period and experiencing those things, you know, is experiencing. So it's a question of calming down, accepting the knowledge, because that is exactly what it is. It's some form of education. It is the reality of certain girls. So we need to accept it. And then we need to, you know, put some things in place and, you know, make women comfortable, especially when it has been proven that they experience these things. And of course, definitely, it affects their productivity.
Now let's look at how this period poverty intersects with other issues like poverty, disability, and even things like gender discrimination.
Okay. Oh, well, poverty, definitely. If you're broke, you can barely, you know, have access to sanitary pads, let alone tampons or cups or whatever it is. So if there is anything that is going to be done to, you know, drive poverty away, then definitely there's definitely going to be an improvement on the lives of the women. A lot of women and young girls, because they lack the basic sum, the money, whatever it is that they need to acquire their sanitary pads, they end up with probably fabrics. Some use fabrics, some use toilet rolls, and these things actually expose them to certain kinds of infections. And sometimes they just sit home because they can't help themselves. Of course, it's not as those things are not as comfortable as when you use pads. People who are disabled, the same thing, they experience the same thing. They need a special kind of attention. In fact, at this point in time, when they have their periods, they have to be given extra care, extra attention, and probably something needs to be uniquely structured for them to help them, you know, walk around themselves when they need to attend to themselves when they're on their periods. And then there was something else you mentioned.
I mentioned gender discrimination.
Oh, yes. Oh, well, yes, it does happen, because as much as I know that we women, we clamor, it's almost like we want everything. We want to do this, we want to do that, we want to be seen there, we want to be seen doing this. But at the same time, we also want some kind of, want some kind of concession in situations like this. So when we talk about gender discrimination in this regard, I think denying a woman certain things because she has her period, I do not support that ideology. Simply because when she has her period, it's a natural thing that happens. It's not something she brought upon herself. So I expect that because she has her period, there should be some kind of something extra to put her on a level playing field with the man. So if that is not considered, it's been discriminatory against the woman, because whatever it is she faces during her period is not of her own making. It's a natural thing, and there is nothing she can do about it. And so you really have to put in something extra to match her up with the male gender.
Now, you know, this thing you said is very interesting, because I've actually heard, you know, a couple of times when people say women want to be in all the spaces, but they go through all these things that make them not to perform 100%. And you can hear some people say, why will I be paying you to not come to work one day because you're on, you know, like you hear all these statements that don't particularly give room for creating that extra, you know, comfort for the women in the workplaces or the women in schools to be able to cope. So how would you respond to that?
I think it's a question of fairness, really. Women want to do a lot, yes. And don't get it wrong, some women don't want to. Some women experience these things and they want to just stay back, and it's okay, it's fine. But there are still women who experience these things and still want to, you know, move up. It's just like experiencing pregnancy, dealing with breastfeeding, and still wanting to, you know, climb the corporate ladder. I had someone tell me sometime, like, what else do women want? Don't they find enough satisfaction in just birthing kids and taking care of their children? I'm like, yes, we do find satisfaction, but sometimes we want more. And it's okay that we want more. All we're asking is, you need to grant us some concession, especially because these things come naturally to them. It's not something that they create out of by themselves or out of nowhere. So I think it's very important that a level playing field, I'll say that again, needs to be made available for them to thrive. So if a woman decides that even though I have my period so and so and this happens to me, I still want to be able to do this, do that, do this. I think it's very important that companies put in policies that let her, take a break when she needs to take a break and come back when she needs to come back. I don't think it's going to affect the overall productivity of whatever organization. Besides, that's why there are assistants. That's why you can delegate jobs during certain moments, You can delegate some responsibilities at some point. It's not going to affect what it is. But we need to make the women comfortable and give them room and a platform to thrive as much as the men who do not experience these things do.
Now, I want you to speak on some of the misconceptions that you have heard or you've encountered, in your line of work that are around this topic that you find are harmful and need to be changed as fast as possible.
I think the first would be that girls on their period are dirty. No, they're not. They're not. They're experiencing some biological transformation in their system. They're letting some blood out, but it doesn't mean they're dirty. They're actually very, very clean, especially those who actually take good care of themselves, who observe who are very hygienic with their, when in those moments.
Yes.
Yes, exactly. And then what else could it possibly be now? I think that's mostly what I usually.
So people still have that mindset of that girls on their periods are dirty.
Yes, people still do. Apparently, people still do, and in fact, it's beyond even people. Even the ones who experience it sometimes feel that way. They just feel a certain kind of way, And like I said, we need to start making girls feel comfortable around these things when they're experiencing these things. We should be able to find some good comfort, really. More education, more awareness. Let's talk more about it, Let's cut the girls some slack. I think we deserve it.
But looking at the laws in our country, do you think that there is any provision for anything like this, maybe in terms of menstrual health or access to these products or anything like that? Is there any provision that helps women?
In all honesty, I can't say for sure. Specifically addressing menstruation, I really don't know. I really don't know, but I really doubt. But the truth is, there are still certain things that, there are things that play out that still fall back to be contradictory to certain laws. For example, let's talk about human rights, for example. Even though a girl has a right to freedom of expression, yeah, that's her right. But you see, when a girl is unable to express herself or is not allowed or somehow, either directly or indirectly, and not allowed to express herself in situations like this, that's contradictory. That's violating her rights, rather. There's right to dignity of human person, okay? There are some embarrassing moments that girls face because of period poverty. And like it or not, it affects their dignity. And you see, that right is definitely being contravened. There's right to life. And like I said earlier, when people have to resort to tissue papers, fabrics, these things can cause infections and sometimes ultimately death sometimes. So you find that these things, at the same time, they still find a way to just contravene certain basic rights that a girl should have. Is there a basic policy specifically addressing menstrual hygiene? I'm not sure about that. But are there laws which are indirectly being contravened when some things are not properly handled in our society? Yes, there are.
But do you think it would be necessary or important to have laws that address this, or would you say that the laws in place are sufficient enough to cover up?
No, I think it's very important that laws address these things. I think it's very important. It's not the same as we're trying to find an indirect way to link it to something. There needs to be specific policies and laws that gives women free access. I repeat, free access to period products. I don't see why a woman should have to pay. And then these days it's so expensive. You know how when you go to government hospitals now, like for example, HIV patients, they have, they have access to free antiretroviral drugs and all those things that they use. I believe that that is the same way laws should be established to give women access to period products, be it tampons, be it pads, be it even medications that help them, in some of those tough moments. Proper education really is very important. Some NGOs are doing a good work at it, Some schools are incorporating it, but I think we can do more work, and we need to do more work. And policies are very, very, definitely very much important.
Now, when we talk about this period poverty, and you mentioned something about NGOs doing their best to educate and also even to provide some of these period products to young girls and young women. But what challenges would you say that these organizations face when trying to, distribute menstrual products to communities or try to help girls be more informed about these things?
I think one would be funding. Funding. NGOs want to do so much. They have so much that they want to do. If you give them enough facilities, they can move from one village to another, from one school to another, supplying sanitary pads, giving them the adequate information and all of that. So one of the major challenges that they have is funding. And I think the second thing will be access, gaining access to those girls. There are some schools that you go to and it's pretty much easy for you to, go speak to the girls, tell them about this, talk to them more. But there are also some places that you go and it will not be so easy for you to, gain access to them. So I think those are the two basic challenges that I'm going to say maybe affects the NGOs when it comes to dissemination of this information. But beyond that, I think they're really doing pretty well. When it's like International Day of the Girl Child, if you go online, you see women NGOs doing fantastic things, amazing things. So I think the major issue is the funding. Really, I think it's the funds.
Now, earlier on, when you were talking about what this period poverty is about, you made mention of that most of the factors that contribute to this is developmental issues.
Mm-hmm.
So can you expand more on that? What exactly are those developmental issues that contribute to this period poverty?
When I talk about developmental issues, I refer to it in terms of things not just working right around us. So, for example, our schools are suffering. Children, beyond girls, they have the right to, they're supposed to have, and be entitled to free education. But because somehow the nation is not going well, it's not progressing well, and it's affecting them, them are not enjoying those rights. Even though there are structures, maintaining it is a problem. Even when they get into the school, there are little, things being obtained from them, and the quality of the education they're giving them there is quite poor. Let's now talk about hospitals, for example. Our hospitals are not properly managed. When you get there, sometimes there's no lights, sometimes they perform surgeries using your phone touch and something like that. So the same way our structures are not yet competent enough to accommodate some of these basic needs that we have as individuals, as citizens of the country. That's the same way we're not even ready mentally. We've not put a structure mentally where we can, make this thing a populous topic, make it something that should be generally discussed, make it something a girl shouldn't be ashamed of. So it's a question of, while this may be a question of our mental conditioning and maybe our understanding, and the others being a question of maybe physical infrastructures and some, putting some other structures in place to make, that breeds development. I still think they are both, very, very important. So when I say developmental issues in this regard, it's more or less in respect of exposure, having the right information, doing the necessary things, talking about it, and just, letting go of the things of the past and just evolving and, like I said earlier, relearning new things.
Now, you told us about your experience when it comes to this, But is there any other experience or any other thing that you've encountered, maybe with other women that you've spoken to that are, you know, different from your experience that you'd like to share?
Does anyone come to mind? Pretty much, I know I've had so much. I could go back to school days, secondary school days, to young girls being denied access to the bathrooms, maybe because hostel, you know, school hostel, secondary school, being denied access to the bathroom because it's time for what prep or whatever it is, and then they're being rushed out of school. You can't do anything. You can't be in the bathroom. You can't as much as stop and say, please, can I just use the bathroom? I'm on my period. It's crazy. Young girls find it so difficult to approach their teachers in school and say, excuse me, ma'am, please, can I be excused? I need to use the restroom. I got my period and I wasn't expecting it. I need to go get this, I need to go get that. And it's very unfortunate that sometimes even the teachers react in a certain way. And that's why there could be some kind of withdrawal. So yes, these things are numerous. They happen. As a matter of fact, these two things I talked about, they just flashed from my memory in secondary school, you know.
Yeah, you experienced that as well.
Not personally, I wasn't but I know classmates had similar situations.
Yes, and you know, it's also quite interesting because when you say that even the teachers react a certain way, it's funny because even the female teachers who should be in a better place to understand what is going on. Why do you think that is so? Why do you think that sometimes even the people that you feel are supposed to understand what you're going through are the ones that are going to, you know, put you into more problems?
You know, that's why I said unlearning and relearning. That's the best they know, actually. That's how they understand it. These teachers who are now adults now, when they grew up, menstruation was so sacred. You hardly talk about it. You shielded yourself. You protected yourself. You can't say anything about it. No one should know that you were on your period. So it's a conditioning that they've had right from when they were kids. They've been groomed, you know, to see things that way. And you know, when you imbibe certain information into a child's mind, when they grow up, it's difficult for them to let it go. But we as adults, as we listen to programs like this, it should be a moment of reflection, you know, for you to say, oh, really, right? And then it should also remind you that those days when you had to hide so much, when you had to deal with period poverty and all the things that come around that, it wasn't really a pleasant experience for you. So it should be like a reflective moment for you to consider other ways to make it better for the present generation. That you experienced it does not mean you should, you know, do the same thing to the younger ones. Think of how you would have preferred to be treated in situations like this, how you would rather have preferred these things to have been handled in your time, and then, you know, let it manifest through you. Show it to other girls, let them see it differently. So it's a question of letting go of those things that we used to know in the past and letting new ideologies, new information, new ways of thinking, you know, take over.
So you wouldn't say that it's too much information, because some people will say that's too much information, you're giving us too much information about all of these things, you know. It's just like what you made mention of, that conditioning in the mind where you're not supposed to talk about it. And it's just part of what we spoke about earlier, that even in the workplace, it's like, why are you telling me, you know, what's my business? I don't have to know that, you know, sort yourself out and all of that stuff.
I'm not telling you because I'm expecting something from you. You probably asked me a question. Why are you frequenting the restroom? Why are you late? Why didn't you come to work yesterday? What do you want me to tell you? I wasn't feeling well. Hello, I got my period and I couldn't leave the bed. I was uncomfortable, I couldn't come. I think it should be that simple. I know it's not that simple. And like I said, it's the mental conditioning that we've been exposed to over the years. But I'm hoping that we'll come to a place where it's easy for us to just talk about, you know, this thing. We should be able to talk about it. Recently, I wasn't at the gym. I was meant to be at the gym and a friend was asking me, why are you not there? Why didn't you come? I said, I got my period. I couldn't come. And she's like, oh yeah, the same thing happened to her 2 days ago and blah, 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 blah. These things are normal things. These are everyday things. But we make it seem so sacred because it's been shrouded somehow, but it shouldn't be. So I believe let's all, you know, just take it in information, every information one at a time, you know. Eventually it will do its work, and one day there'll just be one moment you'll be like, oh my God,
it will become so normal.
Yeah, that's what I hope, because it's actually very normal. And it's been much easier for the younger girls to deal with these things. It's been much easier. You can imagine, I don't know, a lot of us when we were younger, we get stained so easily. We get stained so easily. We don't want to talk about these things. And in those days, we were so uncomfortable. You just feel a certain way. You just feel, because you can't talk. You feel dirty. You feel you can't talk. You feel like it's an abomination if you talk about these things. I don't want my daughter feeling that way. I don't want her feeling that way. Every day I try to prepare her, you know, talk to her. These things are expected. Never be too shy to say, excuse me, ma'am, I got my period. I need to use the restroom. And I pray that whoever she encounters really to take such permission from would really receive it in good faith and let her do what she needs to do, really. Because that's the least you can do for a girl in that state. So, and possibly support her, give her the extra. If a young girl comes to you and says, "Man, this is my period. I got my period. I'm uncomfortable. I need to go." I'm like, "Do you have pads? Can I help you with one? Okay, let me help you go get one, or let me send someone to go get one." That is what I expect us to be doing, not my friend go and sit down, or whatever it is teachers may want to do. Help the child. Let her be comfortable. She's a young girl. You were once there, and I'm sure you would have preferred it if you were treated differently.
So that leads me to ask, what policies, what gaps in policies do you see that are further contributing to this period poverty, and how can those gaps be filled?
I would say, number one, you may be asking for too much, but can we allow maybe some days off for some girls when they're on the period? It may be too much, maybe, but I don't think it's impossible. I don't think it's impossible. Men don't understand these things, but as a woman who experiences heavy flows and who has experienced serious dysmenorrhea, as it's called, I think I would appreciate a day off work or two without feeling guilty, or without feeling the need to call my boss and lie, or without trying to make excuses, or without coming to the office and then having to run to the bathroom every 30 minutes so that I don't get stained. So if we could get policies that maybe excuses a woman, even if it's once in a month, or maybe twice in a month, because I know that most of what we experience happens like the first and the second day. If we get such policies, I know some people, I think there are some countries that actually have policies like this.
Yes.
So I think it's definitely going to be very helpful to the women. Then I'm also going to talk about education. Let's do more on education. Let the boys know. Let the boys know. I know that these things are being taught in school, but they're usually not as deep as it should be. We shouldn't just teach them beyond, okay, this is what happens to a woman when the eggs are ripe and nothing happens and there's no pregnancy, the body. Let's go beyond. Let's add it as part of the curriculum that they have in school, that even the boys will also be taught to help women manage these situations, so that they don't always go about making the woman feel discriminated or feel a certain kind of way. Let them know that they actually have a role to play in making her feel comfortable. I think this will be maybe the most important tool for me at this point.
And if we can achieve that, I think it will be better. It will be a safer environment for girls and women.
Without a doubt. I mean, you think about it.
I mean, it would be nice to have a day off,
think about it,
or 2 days off, you know.
You think about it. Just let me just get a hang of myself. It's difficult. Women are strong, I can tell you. Women are strong, and irrespective of all these things. Do you know what women do when they're on their periods? Sometimes they're stashing pads just so that they don't get embarrassed. Yeah. Sometimes they're combining products just so they don't get embarrassed, you know. And sometimes it's not quite easy. It's not fun. It's discomforting. There's just so much. I mean, but even if we don't get it, we're still strong. Keep pushing.
Of course. Thank you so much, Obiama Kanwachi, for joining us on the program. It's a pleasure and I enjoyed this conversation with you. And I do hope that, you know, one day we'll have all these changes that will make things easier for us. But thank you so much.
Thank you. We'll keep trying. Just it may not be an overhaul, but I think the little change that we can make happen in our little corner matters.
Yes.
So as I'm doing my bit, speaking to people, speaking to young girls, talking on this program about, you know, period poverty and how we can make it less of a problem, I think every other person should do the same thing. As a mother, do it in your homes. As a father, do it in your homes. Just speak to whoever it is. Let them know. Try not to shy away. It won't kill you. Talk about it. Express yourself so that others, the upcoming generation, can also learn to be expressive about it.
Thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us. And yes, Gender Perspective will be back after this break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Now, as we continue this discussion, it's clear that period poverty is shaped not only by economic and social barriers, but also by long-standing misconceptions. Now, myths surrounding menstruation have fueled stigma, limited education, and reinforced silence for generations. Now, to separate truth from misconception and to better understand what really drives the challenges we see today, let's look at the myths and facts. Well, today's conversation has shown us that period poverty is far more than a personal challenge. It is a social, economic, and human rights issue that affects education, opportunity, and dignity. But it has also shown us that change is possible when awareness leads to action and when conversations like these move from the margins to the mainstream. Well, thank you for joining us, and a special thank you to our guest for sharing her powerful insights and expertise. The journey toward gender equality is ongoing, and of course, every voice, every policy, and every act of advocacy brings us one step closer. I'm grateful you spent this time with us. I am Uchenna Chimdi Oluoha. Until next time, this has been Gender Perspectives. Goodbye.